Thank you for joining us for this overview of the Word Origins program. Our team at UFly has been working with our partners in Australia at the Dyslexia Spelled Foundation to make this program available to teachers and students in North America beginning in the 2026-2027 school year. The program has been used for a number of years with great student outcomes in Australia, and we're so excited that DSF has partnered with UFly to bring Word Origins to North America. You might be familiar with the Literacy Institute because of our program UFly Foundations. Several years ago, we began working with our colleagues at DSF to bring UFly Foundations to Australia. Recently, we even collaborated with them to make an Australian edition of the UFly manual. One of the questions we're often asked is if there is a version of UFly for after second grade. Well, there is not, but we learned that DSF had created Word Origins, a word study program for grades 3 and up. When we had our first look at it, we knew immediately that this was the answer to that question about a program for older students. Beginning last summer, we began our work with DSF to create a US version of the Word Origins materials for North America, and we're so excited to bring you that first level now. During this overview, we will take a quick look at the current context and how morphology fits into reading development, and then we're going to take a 30,000-foot view of the Word Origins as a program before we get into some of the more specific aspects of the program. Thinking of building strong readers, up until this time, the focus of our work at UFly has centered on helping teachers build strong phonics instruction. However, after students finish second grade, the need for continued word study still exists. We know that being a proficient reader by the end of elementary school is paramount to the rest of a child's education, and that word reading becomes increasingly complex as students get older. Additionally, vocabulary acquisition is essential to accessing increasingly complex text. If we look at NAEP scores, clearly the work of improving Tier 1 instruction in literacy needs to continue. Thinking about the contributors to reading success, we can begin with the simple view of reading, which you might be familiar with. This theoretical understanding of how reading develops has two distinct components, which when developed alongside each other produce reading comprehension. Breaking this simple view down a bit, skills such as phonemic awareness, phonics, and orthographic patterns fall under the word recognition component, while constructs such as vocabulary, knowledge of language structures, and background knowledge are part of the language comprehension component. Having strong word recognition and language comprehension increases the likelihood of having strong reading comprehension. We might look at this formula and wonder where morphology belongs in this equation. A growing body of research continues to add to the understanding that morphology is an important skill that bridges word recognition and language comprehension, strengthening the development of both constructs. This happens because the English language is fundamentally morphophonemic in nature. English spelling is often phonologically unpredictable, and that is where morphology plays an important role in providing stability and predictability to the spelling system. So you might wonder how Word Origins helps us with this goal of continuing to develop strong readers and writers beyond just the most foundational levels. This program is designed as a word study program that expands students' understanding of the morphological underpinnings of English to increase their reading and spelling proficiency. Word Origins aims to create a deep lexical quality or a strong memory trace for words, allowing students to retrieve words more efficiently when speaking, reading, and writing. Having a deep lexical quality of a word means having an understanding of the word in all of its different forms. This comes from Perfetti and Hart's 2002 Theory of Lexical Quality. A word's phonological form is how a word sounds. We might know what the syllables are in that word or what the individual phonemes are. For example, in the word rains, it has one syllable and four phonemes. R, A, Ns. A word's orthographic form is how a word is spelled using symbols. In English, we call these letters. Our word rains is spelled using 5 different letters: R, A, I, N, S. We put all of these letters together to correctly spell the word rains. The semantic form of a word is what a word means. Some words have multiple meanings. When I hear a word out of context, I might not know which semantic form I should use. However, a word's spelling or orthographic form can give me a clue as to which meaning of the word should be used. When I hear the word rains, my brain has to sift through multiple meanings and representations I know for this word. It could mean rains, as in water falling from the sky. It could mean reins, as in what a queen or king does over their kingdom. Or it could mean reins, as in the gear that a person holds when riding a horse. A word's morphological form refers to what morphemes, or meaningful word parts, are used to build the word. The word rains has 2 morphemes, rain and s. Rain is a specific kind of morpheme called a base word. The base word rain means water falling from the sky. S is a different kind of morpheme called a suffix. The suffix S is used to make words plural, to show more than one, or to show third person present tense. A word's syntactic form refers to the word's grammatical classification, what part of speech the word could be, such as verbs, nouns, adjectives, and adverbs. Rains can be a verb, an action word, or a noun, a person, place, thing, or idea. The syntactic form of a word helps us understand how the word can be used in a sentence, as part of its syntactic function in the subject or predicate. For example, in the sentence, in Florida, it rains almost every afternoon during the summer, rains is functioning as a verb and is part of the predicate of the sentence. However, in the sentence, the heavy rains were needed after the drought, rains is functioning as a noun and is part of the subject of the sentence. Being able to switch between syntactic forms and functions helps students create a variety of sentences. A word's etymological form refers to the word's historical or root version. It is the history of the word and how we came to use it as we do today. Some words have an easier history to trace than others, and sometimes etymologists have to make approximations of where relationships are less clear. Our base word rain has a long history. It was first used in Proto-Germanic, then up through Old English and into Middle English, and finally in our modern English we use today. When you have all of these forms represented in your conceptualization of a word, then you have a deep lexical quality of that word. In word origins, the target words focus on more complex words of Latin and Greek origin than the Anglo-Saxon word rains. Additionally, with the number of morphemes quickly acquired across the program, students have the opportunity to encounter and work with many more words than the target words alone. Using affixes and a variety of root and base words, students' vocabularies can expand at an explosive rate. Decades of research have contributed to the knowledge base that helped inform the creation of word origins. Researchers have long emphasized the value of students understanding the morphological structures and regularities of English, which help move them from reading at more basic levels to more complex levels. A solid understanding of morphology also aids in a student's ability to accurately and fluently spell words, which can lead to increases in overall writing fluency and coherence. Additionally, instruction that includes components of phonology, morphology, and etymology, instead of focusing only on one component, was found to be beneficial in improving students' ability to read, spell, and expand their vocabulary knowledge. Thinking about Word Origins as a program, Word Origins was designed for students who are in third grade or above. Our students should have a foundational understanding of reading skills built through explicit and systematic phonics instruction before moving on to Word Origins content. Word Origins lessons were designed to be implemented as part of the whole group core instruction during the reading block that's provided to all learners. Following a consistent 9-step lesson routine allows teachers to focus on what they are teaching as opposed to how they are teaching. Word Origins lessons were designed to be part of daily instruction and take approximately 30 minutes to complete. Each lesson includes a new target word that's centered around that week's root or morpheme of focus. With multiple exposures to one morpheme across a week, students build and deepen lexical connections between words before encountering new content the following week. Each level of the Word Origins program equates to one academic year. Each level is further broken down into units, weeks, and individual lessons. Each unit includes 9 weeks of content. During each week of instruction, new concepts are taught, and previously learned concepts are continuously referenced, building in that interleaved practice and helping strengthen lexical connections between words. Looking more closely at each unit, weeks 1 through 8 include a new target morpheme. The 9th week of each unit is dedicated to interleaving weeks 1 through 8 in a cumulative skill review. This same structure is mirrored in each week's instruction. Lessons 1 through 4 are where new target words are introduced each day, and that culminates in a weekly review during Lesson 5. Let's look at an example of our Unit 1 scope and sequence. If I look at week 2 of my Unit 1 scope and sequence here, I can see the new Latin root I will be focusing on is the root tract. My knowledge of this root is built across the week with the introduction of the target words tractor, distract, retract, and subtract across lessons 1 through 4. During Lesson 5, I bring all this new content together in a review lesson where we look at reading a text containing these target words and different expansion activities as well. The 9-step lesson routine is a key part of our instruction during lessons. The core of the lesson routine addresses each of the various word forms we discussed during lexical quality. We begin each lesson, however, with a review of our prior learning, and then after teaching all of the forms, we apply what we've learned, and we conclude the lesson with a final review. There are 9 lesson steps. Let's take a closer look at each one. Our first step is the review of prior learning. In this step, a teacher provides either a definition of a morpheme and students would respond with the morpheme that corresponds with that definition, or a teacher provides a morpheme and asks students to respond with the definition for that morpheme. This acts as an opportunity for interleaf practice and a warm-up before the introduction of any new content. The next step is the phonological form, where the target word will be introduced in just its auditory form. It's important that students hear the word and say it themselves to create a phonological representation of the target word. Teachers and students will also identify the syllables and individual phonemes contained in the word. This careful attention to the sounds of the target word helps to build a solid base for its accurate phonological representation before introducing more complex forms of the word. The target word's orthographic form is introduced next. This is where a teacher will show the target word spelled out and discuss any irregular spellings that might occur in the word. Suggested teacher language is provided for any irregular spelling of the target word. For instance, in our example lesson, we get two different explanations for the SS and URE irregular spellings in the word pressure, using the following language. In the word pressure, the sh sound is spelled SS. The sound at the end of the word is spelled URE. Explicit instruction in the spelling of the target word helps to create an accurate orthographic mapping of this word in our mental lexicon and avoid any spelling errors later in the lesson. Our next step is semantic form, where we provide a student-friendly explanation for the meaning of the word. We also give example sentences where the target word is used across different contexts. A non-example is also provided, so students can help start building semantic boundaries around a word's use and meaning for times when it would or would not be appropriate. Next, we look at the target word's morphological form. Here, we look at the morphemes that make up the target word and how the individual morphemes influence the target word's meaning and function. For words of Latin origin, such as the word pressure, we use a morpheme matrix like the one on my screen because Latin words follow a consistent structure of prefix, root, suffix. However, for words of Anglo-Saxon or Greek origin, we use word sums to represent how the morphemes of these words can be added together to form whole words. This step introduces the word's syntactic form with an explicit introduction to the target word's grammatical function and where in the sentence this target word could be used. When a target word has multiple grammatical functions, each function is introduced individually with example sentences using the target word in that specified function. In this step, teachers and students will co-create a sentence using the target word, and then students will have the opportunity to create their own sentence using the target word. This I do, we do, you do structure helps ensure students are using the target word accurately and having multiple opportunities to respond and practice before attempting sentence creation independently. We briefly look at the word's etymological form to give us background on the word's introduction and use in the English language across time, how old and for how long the target word has been used, and to also give us insights into how the target word has evolved over time. The application activity is where students work with the target word to expand their understanding of its meaning, function, and forms. The application activities progress from less complex earlier in the week to more complex later in the week. Application activities range from conversation activities, like the one on my screen, to the creation of a product, like the Latin word web, or using a tool such as morpheme tiles to build many different words. Our final step is a quick review where students get the opportunity to say, spell, and identify the morphemes in the target word before we conclude the lesson. We can see how the individual lesson steps are reconstituted across the lesson and how they flow into one another. Each lesson is about 2.5 to 3 pages in length inside of the manual. When you purchase Level 1, 5 books are included, 4 units, and 1 implementation guidebook. Teachers will work through the units starting in Unit 1 up through Unit 4 across the academic year. The implementation guide was designed to help teachers broaden their own knowledge of morphology and the different constructs covered in word origins, and also to give explicit guidance on how to implement each step of the lesson. In addition to the manuals, the Word Origins program comes with many resources, some of which are printable and some of which are digital. Each lesson has a corresponding editable slide deck, printable passages to go along with Day 5 and Week 9 lessons, and additional resources for teachers and templates for students to help scaffold learning depending on individual student support needs. Besides the manuals, slides, and morpheme tiles, teachers will need a class set of whiteboards and markers and individual student notebooks to capture longer or more complex responses, such as a morpheme matrix or sentences. This notebook can be a treasure trove of student learning and progress across units. The morpheme tiles are an integral part of the Word Origins program and are used during application and review activities. When you purchase a set of Level 1 manuals, one printed set is included with your purchase. When thinking about setting up your Word Origins classroom, one set of morpheme tiles will be used for every 2 students. This is meant to be a collaborative practice activity with a peer as the students talk about the morphemes and use the tiles to build many different words. To make this material as accessible as possible, you can print and cut your own set of morpheme tiles, or you can order them pre-made from our publisher Ventris. There are 2 different kinds of assessments included in the Word Origins program: unit assessments and a whole year spelling assessment. Each unit includes an assessment that is given before and after teaching a unit. In this assessment, students will identify morphemes in words, spell words, and accurately use a word in a sentence. The whole year spelling assessment is a more expansive list asking students to spell words they've encountered during instruction across the level. It's important to note that these assessments are to show growth and mastery of taught content and should not be used for more frequent progress monitoring or grades. During the first year of implementation, all students, regardless of grade, will begin in Level 1. Level 1 begins with the most commonly occurring morphemes in English and builds systematically through the scope and sequence and across levels. Starting in Level 1 will allow for students to build a solid base of their morphological understanding before moving on to more complex morphemes in later levels. During year 2 of implementation, students who have had instruction in Level 1 would move on to Level 2, and the same is true for year 3 of implementation. Students who have already had instruction in Levels 1 and 2 would be ready for the content in Level 3. As of the 2026-2027 school year, only Level 1 of the North American edition of Word Origins is available for purchase. Subsequent levels will be available during the 2027-2028 school year when they would be needed for implementation. We hope you found this quick overview of the Word Origins program informative. I'd like to direct your attention to a few follow-up resources that you might find beneficial. The first is the link to our UFly website, where you can find additional FAQs, a sample scope and sequence, and a few sample lessons. The second is the link to our publisher Ventris, where you can go to purchase manuals and morpheme tiles, or to put in an order request form. Another great resource is the webinar we hosted with one of the creators of Word Origins, Mandy Nathan from DSF. In this webinar, Mandy walks us through the origins of Word Origins and dives into additional program specifics. This webinar can be found on our UFly YouTube page.